dialectic, right? I mean, this is because there was a very strong progressive movement. The New Deal was basically a turnkey operation. When he got there in the first 100 days, there was legislation in Congress, like things like the Wagner Act and the Social Security Act, that were already written. We didn't have that on January 20th, 2009, forever to our detriment. I mean, for all our movement, we just did not have a Wagner. We did not have that level of progressive organization in place for Barack Obama to sign. That's why the Geithners were able to take over. That's why the Larry Summers were able to take over. FDR, why did he become a progressive? I mean, it's a real historical mystery. This is a guy who grew up with, more servants than most of us have friends. This is a guy, when he got polio, it wasn't that bad, because at least in his family compound at Campobello, on the eastern coast of Canada, they had an elevator, so he could get around. This is a guy who was born to enormous privilege. Why did he become what conservatives then called a traitor to his class? And I find this a fascinating question. And it gets to questions of character, and it gets to questions of how you pressured someone like FDR. I think he had a native confidence, precisely because of the fact he came from this old American aristocracy, that he really didn't give a shit about pissing off rich people. When he started the Securities and Exchange Commission, does anyone know who he named to run it?
Joe Kennedy.
Right, and why did he do that?
Because Joe knew where the bodies were buried.
It takes a thief to catch a thief. He said, you were going to cut these guys off at the knees, Joe. You're going to rip their balls off, and I don't care how loud they squeal. They're my people, and I'm going to take them to deal. Bill Clinton was a very different kind of guy. A lot of these presidents we've had, Democratic presidents we've had, they've been these sort of class arrivés. These kind of people who have this kind of nervousness in the presence of wealth, this kind of insecurity, this need to be loved, this kind of character formation that makes it very hard to challenge a guy like Larry Summers for someone like Bill Clinton. Rewind back to LBJ. LBJ, in those 2 years, 1965 and 1966, before the Republicans started reaching the ascendancy again after the Goldwater defeat, passed practically every element we know of the modern American state. Medicare, Medicaid, federal aid to education, which didn't even exist, National Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for the Humanities, the first environmental legislation, legal aid, which had an enormous, as I'll tell you, motive force in filing lawsuits and becoming sort of like a lever for social change in America. Why did this happen? Well, he inherited the presidency from a martyr, JFK, who wasn't able to pass anything. Was a very ineffectual president when it came to Capitol Hill. And he felt really insecure in the face of this aristocratic guy, JFK. So there he was, telling the American people, we need to pass this radical agenda. And he practically called it radical. Read the Great Society speech of May 22, 1964. He said, we're going to basically create a society of splendor without squalor, beauty, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And he went to a joint session of Congress and he said, let us continue. Let us pass the agenda that only existed as a dream to JFK. And he had this really kind of strange character flaw too. He wanted to be seen as the big daddy who took care of everybody. And if you've ever known someone like that in your life, he wanted to be the guy who everyone owed their security to, right? And this was born of the fact that this is a guy who grew up in very modest circumstances in the Texas Hill Country, and liberalism was associated with him with basically being looked up to as the guy who delivered the goods. So, how do you make Barack Obama uncomfortable? That's the question. It's not just coming up with the best solutions. It's not coming up with sensible things. It's figuring this guy out, figuring out where his vulnerabilities are. Torture wasn't even supposed to be in the news. He had tried to wipe it off the slate. I mean, that was the whole ballgame, right? But suddenly we're reading about it every day. And part of the reason for that is, Dick Cheney's strange. But part of this very strange thing. Every time a Democratic president gets elected, it's always to clean up the absolute fetid, ogling stables that were bequeathed to them by the last Republican. And they always have a very compelling electoral rhetoric. Basically, they promise purification. That's what Carter did. That's what Clinton did, a new kind of Democrat. And that's what Obama did. It's a very vulnerable position. Carter, right away, as soon as Burt Lance, his Treasury Secretary, was able to be kind of caught in some bank hanky-panky, suddenly didn't look like the guy who said, I won't lie to you, and I'm going to turn the corner on the corruption of Watergate. And never again after that was he seen as a different kind of Democrat. Bill Clinton was shivved every which way by the Arkansas Project, and they basically did everything in their power to make it seem like he wasn't a different kind of Democrat. He was, in fact, a Bolshevik, of course. Barack Obama is working against this context, and he has a very strong sense of it. He really, really, really wants to be seen as a reconciling figure. It's one of the pathologies of our ruling elite is that they believe that if smart, disinterested people get together in a room together, they can solve all the problems. That's how we got from Vietnam, the best and the brightest. Barack Obama is in and of that world. So, to conclude, where are the pressure points? I think that, in a way, things that people like the ACLU are doing, things like people like Marcy Wheeler are doing, things that people are doing to investigate the criminal conspiracy behind the torture have pushed things to an area where Barack Obama is extremely uncomfortable, and he's letting this story continue. And that's because his amour propre, his self-love, his self-image is based on the idea that he rules over an America that possesses of a certain measure of decency. So find these pressure points. I'm not really disagreeing with any of my fellow panelists. I'm just talking about a change in emphasis. And realize that he has the very hard job of governing 300 people and keeping a coalition of 60 senators together to get anything done. And basically, if he's not doing what we think he should be doing, well, why the hell should he? There's a lot of people in this country, and they don't all agree with us. So how are we going to push him? How are we going to find his pressure points? How are we going to twitch his nerve endings in a way such that he moves in our direction instead of Larry Summers' direction? That's a harder question than appears on the surface, and one that demands we not be glib about solving it. We're going to close this chapter.